Go. Let's go. So, friends, this is the second part of the Manipura chakra workshop. Today, we have the 22nd of September, 2013 year. And we, Vadim Zaporozhov and Mikhail Kolesnik, are conducting this seminar. All archived information is available on the Open Yoga website, less than Earl greater than. Let us continue with you these reflections of ours, or as our research in relation to the chakra. Now let's go back to the Shat Chakra Mirupana again, where it says the following. I meditate on it, I mean on by Jaren. Oh, so now that I'm all ready. But no. Misha, come on, I sewed it. The lotus. The Manipura lotus is located near the navel. It's golden, 10 petals on ha. Vladika morning, to give all the best about the goddess Latina. When Edie reflects on Manipura, he gets Fatalo Sithi permanent happiness and becomes the Lord of Desires, destroying sorrows and illnesses, deceiving death, and can enter the body of another. So look here, there are also such very interesting mentions of so-called superpowers or Sith. Indeed, if, there's a saying that it's best to be healthy, Don't ask for wealth, ask for health. Indeed, if you do not have health, then wealth is not a joy. And look what kind of thing turns out. If we look at the human device from the standpoint of a general idea, a general axiomatics, each of us has our physical body, each of us has our bodies. One is physical, subtle bodies, there are causal bodies. They are supported by the existence of the currents of the brain, which comes from our supreme from our higher self. And it turns out that, as it were, some kind of excessive force is needed in order to support. Well, our physical body, so that it does not collapse. Well, you know that every second we get a huge number of tomato microbes if we are talking about biology. And they are, in general, ruthlessly destroyed. Ruthlessly destroyed. No one is having discussions there, so these are the very ones, no debates are being conducted. Moreover, a huge number of some unfavorable environmental factors affect us. We don't always eat good food, we don't always breathe clean air there, we don't always drink good water there. Sometimes we find ourselves, in such an aggressive environment of a purely mental nature. When there are some personalities around us, unpleasant to us. Unpleasant. In other words, it also seems to exert such a well-known pressure. And in order to oppose these forces, our vital prana, our vital force is spent. And according to the teachings of yoga, our natural state of joy, happiness. And so it turns out that as our prana is spent on resisting negative factors, it becomes less and less. And we do not feel as good as we could. And so, look, all the work with the Manipura chakra, when you have this vitality increases, automatically leads to the fact that the degree of your health increases. And only after that you can rejoice and enjoy. Only after that, wealth and everything else, everything goes to you, as they say. For good, yes. And in this regard, these practices for working with the Manipura chakra are extremely important. And now I want to show you another exercise, again from the section of Hatha Yoga, on working with the Manipura chakra. The exercise is called Dhyana Bandha. Together with this continuation of this act of the bank, the so-called Nali exercises. This is actually an action that directly affects the abdominal cavity, but no longer due to such pressure as in the pose, but due to manipulations of the abdominal muscles. Will you demonstrate? Yes, I'm going to teach you now, and in general. No question, now everything will be done here.
Uncle.
Yoga. What are you? So, come on. What? Take off our advertising t-shirt, right? 16. Come on. Well, on the beach or something, plus 16 to hang, right? Everywhere. So, and look here. So now. And here I also have two striptease, yes, arrange. Here we have the navel area and ours. What is it called there, this one? The intestinal tract, right. You know that the food that gets into us, it gets, as you remember, first into the stomach, and then is exposed to numerous enzymes. There's gastric juice and stuff. And it begins, as it were, roughly speaking, to be processed at the chemical level. Here. And with this, as a matter of fact, everything is clear. Then it is more or less crushed and brought to a condition. It is subjected to numerous other influences, in particular, the effects of E. coli there. Yes, I remind you, friends, that it seems to us that we are on our own. And we, friends, are a symbiosis together with E. coli. In a normal healthy person, sometimes up to 5 kilograms of E. coli, friends, without which you cannot live. If there is no E. coli, your food will stop being digested. This is a very big problem, dysbiosis is called. It's very acute, you know, when the antibiotics became fine with me. So, you have enough life boiling inside your stomach. That is, it seems to you that you ate and everything is fine, right? No. There goes, on the one hand, you are acting purely on a chemical level. So with different reagents. They help you in digesting food like these. Microbiases, such helpers. Like E. coli. And this whole process is slowly but surely moving. Well, and the natural commission, when we go to the toilet, and with a sense of deep satisfaction, as they say, to facilitate. Here. But as can be understood from ancient such instructions in yoga, digestion and assimilation of food, it is not limited only to purely physical or chemical processing. There is also some kind of this small component associated with some subtle ingredients of prana. In other words, there are some other components. The components of life, and what modern science, apparently, does not know anything about yet. In any case, nothing has been officially said about this yet. But what is described in ancient treatises, and what is likely to be studied soon. So, roughly speaking, if you have eaten plants, plant food or animal food, there remain thin armored structures, or some subtle structures incomprehensible from the previous living being. And since we all, in general, eat plant or animal food, it is necessary, as it were, roughly speaking, to break these subtle structures. I'm not talking about chemical bonds right now, but this subtle level of subtle matter, something that modern science knows nothing about. And so a large amount of vital subtle forces is spent on this. Therefore, nutrition and the spiritual process are very much interconnected. In India, they are literally all really obsessed with this science of nutrition. First of all, it is very strictly regulated what can and cannot be eaten. It is very strictly regulated as it is. Even to the point that if someone else is present there as someone else, then you have no right to eat, since, roughly speaking, he will affect you negatively, right? Here. So, it's clear that, well, this process is quite complicated for you. And there are exercises that, on the one hand, affect this whole mechanism, helping to digest food faster and painlessly on the one hand, and on the other hand, introduce excess of this prana into Manipura chat and get a very strong effect. Here is one of these exercises called Uddiyana Bank. In one of the possible translations, this means, as it were, an ascending castle. The word ud is something that is directed upwards. Do you know how it is? Is the fishing rod worth it? The fishing rod is looking at Diane's. And a bank is a castle. So, how is it performed? It is performed as follows. We bend our knees slightly and rest. It's just that we're stuck. And so, as a matter of fact, friends, this is the pose of the goalkeeper in the gate, who is waiting. You know, when they play football here. Here. If you stand in it long enough and experiment with your feelings and with your posture, sooner or later, you will feel that you can transfer your body weight through your palms to your knees. That is, it turns out that your abdominal area will relax. That is, it will kind of hang by itself. Let's all try it. Let's all get up and do it. I give mine. I give mine. I need to give you a toy of some kind. So, here we stand. And look here. Here's how to start performing Uddiyana jar, or here's working with Manipura chakra. Here you stand and start by just standing for a few minutes every day. You don't have to do anything else. You should just feel this area. You have to feel this area and feel it. Here is to experiment a little, sit down a little more, less, and so on. I remind you of the basic position of Hatha Yoga. I'm just struggling with it right now, like I don't know what. Unfortunately, obscurantism has spread both here and in the West. Hatha Yoga is a natural thing. She doesn't need any art. I'm busy, I'll come in. Here. And sooner or later, you will want to experiment with so. What is it called there? The wall of the abdominal cavity. You will want to remove it into yourself, or, conversely, squeeze it forward. Here. Moreover, you can, let's say, remove one hand and leave the other. And you will feel like there is something in your stomach once, as the sensations somehow began to be different. You need to swap places. You can sit down a little harder, sit down a little less. Here's finding that position. Here your body will tell you in what position you need to be. You should feel comfort, joy, even somewhere from the performance. No violence. One more time. In fact, the role of any instructor in Hatha Yoga is to ensure that you rediscover this or that exercise, but in no way introduce something alien from the outside and unnatural. Right now, there is a lot of debate about what is considered Hatha Yoga, what is not. And these lined up asanas cheeks. They just drive me to white heat with their trauma safety. It's just crazy. I'm always joking. Tell the little child that how is he there with his hands and feet? He needs to read the security country and build him a mass in position. Yes, and look what begins next. Then you start to pull your stomach into yourself, just pull it in. And, of course, your attention begins to focus on the navel area, here, on the spine somewhere there. But no, it's still necessary to impose. Here, let me lift it up. I just can't figure out why I have a microphone. So, and then you start doing as follows. You begin to exhale. And suddenly you realize that if you have a body, hold it on your knees with an exhalation. It is easier to absorb the abdominal wall. Again, you can experiment with the chin. Sometimes it's easier if the chin is pressed closer to the trunk. And so you get this pose. When you exhale, you pulled your stomach up. She's in the spirit of a little weakened. And so, in fact, it is called Ulyana Bank. So, immediately a warning. A harsh warning. Unfortunately, a huge number, to put it mildly. Fake yoga teachers who, God knows what, start talking at the same time. So, remember, there is one trick here. You don't have to force it. That some people are starting to draw in so much, it means that the stomach, something the eyes are already starting to have this very thing. No. The secret here is not how much you did. The secret here is that you found exactly your position and washed it for a reasonable amount of time. Because usually beginners do with a terrible force of retraction to discomfort, and these would-be instructors, they say, yes, yes, stronger, stronger. So, stronger, stronger. What in general? Nonsense. Your task is to capture this inner harmony. So, this exercise is called Uddiyana Bandha. Sometimes there is a small, as if auxiliary moment, how to make it better, especially if you are just starting out. You can look, sit down with an exhalation, and then get up without inhaling. When you sit down with an exhalation, or bend down with an exhalation, you seem to expel the air more strongly, and then naturally. When you rise, due to the pressure difference, your abdominal wall naturally retracts in a beautiful way. And so, if you do this exercise, you are seriously affecting, first of all, the Manipura chakra, the cubic center. And then there is another continuation of this exercise, the so-called nali. This is when you start to sort of shake up the abdominal area. Clockwise, counterclockwise. How is it done? This is done as follows. Again, on exhalation, we pull in the abdominal wall, and then we transfer it, so the emphasis is on one hand, on the other. And over time, we suddenly begin to feel that only one group of muscles has tensed, and the other has relaxed, then vice versa. And now, due to this game, you can achieve such a wave-like movement in a circle. So I'm going to try to do it now. I do not know if it will or not. Because sometimes it is very clearly visible, but not. I don't know what was visible there, no. It's obvious, right? Here. And a very, very cool exercise. So, it is done very simply. Just as you exhale, shift the emphasis from one hand to the other, from one to the other. And then you can learn so that in 100, as if it were in a circle, clockwise, counterclockwise. It has a very strong effect on the area associated with digestion and puts things in order there. It releases prana and does a lot of other things. But this exercise has another quite strong continuation. This one, if everything is fine with your digestion, and you have this excess of prana, which goes to, as it is said in the texts, to a feeling of happiness of being. In general, friends, I have to tell you that when I was little, I practiced yoga, back in the Soviet years. I was just surprised myself. Here you do yoga beautifully, harmoniously, for a long time, and here is a feeling of joy of being. Well, you know, here you are. Here is the feeling, first of all, of the body, as if it is not the body, but your clothes that give you pleasure. It's nice to look at the hand. These here, sometimes I noticed, are little kids. He's about to take his paw like that. Believe me then, it means yes. And now it's nice something. This is the feeling of life. It is clear that with age there are a lot of problems. Prana is spent on everything else. There is no longer that, so. This very piggy frolic, it is clear already, youth. Here. But again, when you start practicing, excess prana is released. This excess of prana as vitality begins to manifest the joy of being, immunity. This inner charisma is like this, you know, here it is the navel center, and you can do all the obstacles there. So this is the most in life, push through with your belly, you know, right? Here. And if you only then learn to draw in and shake your stomach like this, then there is a very subtle process. The so-called introduction of prana into the central channel through the Manipura chakra. According to the theory of yoga, the chakra is a kind of opportunity to enter, so that we introduce prana into the central channel, through this or that place. And so if you introduce prana in this way through the Manipura chakra into the central kana, then first of all you get an experience associated with, how to say, it is with this chakra. Moreover, there are so-called fast methods in yoga that use the devices of our human body quite strongly, seriously. And a lot of work is done there. With consistency. It is as if you connect all the pranas, or those energies that you have in the lower part of the body, and those pranas, or those energies that you have in the upper part of the body, with the help of mudras and banks in the navel area. And then, at the expense of Uddiyana, Banhi and Nali, you begin to awaken the Manipura chakra, as it were. It immediately gives you an excess of vitality, and your immunity increases dramatically. And there is a powerful cleansing, as they say in yoga, of thin channels clogged with dirt. As soon as the channels are cleared, it means. And sometimes it can. Well, it's a different process. After that, as soon as the subtle channels are cleared, exercises in pranayama yoga, in breathing yoga, go very easily. When you begin to direct some streams of prana through these channels. And this leads to absolutely fantastic experiences and sensations later. Absolutely fantastic, which we do not even guess. Therefore, as if this is the logic in yoga. First, increase vitality by Manipura chakra. It will cleanse the body. It will cope with all diseases, make the body healthy, and the excess. Vitality, excess prana, you can already direct to your spiritual development. And when you read in one book or another that yoga cures some diseases there, yoga cures other diseases. Yes, yoga does not cure anything. Friends, doctors are treating you. Yoga. This is a system of self-knowledge. And all these effects are like a free app. A free app from learning how we did everything with you. Because you will not be able to reach certain spiritual levels if you do not pull up some on the physical level yet. Some kind of. Here. Therefore, it means that I highly recommend this exercise from Dayan Bank. One more time. I'm not forcing it in any way. That is, well, how can I tell you? That is, here the secret is in harmony, like nowhere else. It's better to just stand there, leaning on your hands, than with terrible force, as some do, they pull in the wall of the abdomen. In other words, in another way to say, you will understand, the body will tell you to what extent to draw in the abdominal wall, and how long to stay on the exhale. There is such a philosophical rule. Why don't yoga teachers teach it in Moscow? Why are they engaged in the adjustment of asanas and the spread of safety trauma? Friends, if you need a trauma, safety is no longer yoga. By definition. Do you understand? For yoga, trauma, safety is not needed. Here, for acrobats in the circus, there, for clowns, I'm sorry, for gymnasts or ballerinas, yes, it is necessary. But not for yoga. Therefore, even the most difficult exercises that yogs sometimes demonstrate, right? You will approach them naturally through. Here you will listen to your body. Not only the body will tell you to what extent to reach, but God forbid, you will start raping yourself. Trauma safety is needed only for those who rape themselves, because they don't trust themselves, they trust some false teachers outside. Books are being written to me now, these volumes are being brought to me, damn it. I'm just, you know me. It kills yoga.
Here.
But in such subtle moments as Uddiyana, Banha, Nali, the effect is simply lost there. So, you have to feel inside yourself, grasp this harmony, experience the joy of fulfillment, the joy of overcoming into yourself. Not, my God, never force it, but just gradually gain execution time. Well, as if the body will prompt you, and thereby you will again have an impact on Manipura chat. So that's wonderful. And now we will go further. Maybe there are questions. I just remembered, Yoga is one of the 6 yogas of Naropa. Vadim used to read them. These are Tibetan yogas, yes. And one of these yogas is yoga, or yoga of inner warmth, and just, it seems to me, it works directly with Manipura charts. Everything we have been doing now is aimed precisely at transforming our sexual energy. Yes, well, look, the logic is like that. Let's do it again in order. The logic of the yogic path is that first raise the level of your vitality, clear the channels and centers, get rid of. And when you raise the level of vitality, you, of course, at the expense of the body's immunity, the body begins to cope with diseases and thereby treats them. In other words, this is how yoga treats, if I may say so, diseases indirectly. You know, as prevention. And look, there is an excess of vitality, which is already being used for some breakthrough yoga exercises. But you and I are made very cleverly. As soon as the body realizes that you have an excess of vitality, it first of all begins to spend this excess of vitality on sexuality. Why? Yes, it's very simple. It's like an instinct of self-preservation, but not within the framework of one life, but within the framework of many lives. Since you are in physically normal shape, since you have a lot of strength, it's time to think about offspring. Because you never know what will happen then, right? And if you die, and do not leave offspring in the form of human bodies, then you will have to be born with a decrease in the bodies of animals, which is completely unacceptable. Therefore, there is such an indirect indicator of yoga classes. If everything goes right with you, then you should automatically have an elevated level of sexuality. I mean, some people you know who start doing yoga, they are very surprised. Well, as it is something. So this is the very thing. Wow. Secret me, right? I mean, you know how. As in early youth, yes, when hormones play. This amuses many, surprises many, even hinders many. Why? Because, oops, the sexuality factor has woken up, which has been dormant there for 20 years. Do you understand? And I started doing yoga in a normal way, I woke up, right?
Here.
But this is the logic of the structure of our body. And here the question immediately arises. But what to do? Well, as if this excess of vitality can be used on the one hand for spiritual development, and on the other hand, it can be used for sexuality. Yoga says the following about this. The following advice gives that sexuality is sacred. Continuation of the sacred life. If you waste your sexuality on having children, that's the best thing you can do at all. But not, of course, like you in India or in Africa, who, in my opinion, are only engaged in making children, and they care about how to feed them. And the fact is that you have to give birth to a certain number of children, leave offspring behind. Not more, not less, but as much as necessary. But what to do with excess? And nature in this respect, it gives in excess. Why? Because, well, you never know the risks. And now the question arises what to do with the excess of sexuality. And yoga actually recommends transforming this sexuality into higher spiritual forces. But again, do it extremely carefully and competently. Because if you just sort of ignore your sexuality, it will still break through. In other words, you will not achieve anything with direct prohibitions. Therefore, yoga recommends that you, well, this is a separate section, first of all, learn to have sex in a certain way, in order to preserve the part that, the potential that goes to the continuation of life, and keep it in the most careful way, and the other part that goes to pleasure. Because having sex, in general, brings pleasure, right? Here, choose it to the maximum. But this is a separate, very serious section of yoga. I'm not even going to touch it now. Here. And all that. And in this way, it is created for you. But if you know how to have sex in this way, you create a normal springboard to transform excess sexuality into spirituality. And here in particular, as Mikhail said, there is in Tibet, it is widely known. Well, how wide? In narrow hands. Here. Widely in narrow circles. Here. It is known as Yoga Tumo or Dumo. When you begin to convert this sexuality, which was obtained from an excess of vitality, into such an inner psychic warmth, and it, in turn, begins to turn into physical heat. And indeed, a person there demonstrates some miracles. He can live there in light clothes in big frosts, not bask by the fire, that is, and so on, and so on. I knew people who, well, including approached this yoga. But the truth is, you know, oddly enough, you are not even from the side of any exercises. They were just experimenting with themselves, and indirectly came to this one. Here I have a friend of an uncle, here he told me, and he lived, you know, in such a one-story house with his own garden. He said, listen as you speak. Listen to me, as he says, it's cool. I save so much money for heating, well, just like that. I flushed the water, so this heating system, so that it doesn't freeze there, is it clear, right? And nothing else is needed. Here. But this, by the way. So, look here. Once again, logic. We do yoga, clean the channels and centers, increase immunity, increase our vitality. Vitality immediately manifests itself as sexuality. We are learning to work with sexuality correctly, and therefore, we are learning to sublimate sexuality, including into some higher spiritual forces and manifestations. And here are exercises like those of Dayan Ban and Nali. It just contributes to the fact that you, as it were, pull out these sexual impulses from lower centers, translating them to a higher one. And by the way, in previous seminars we discussed with you that, let's say, the lowest chakra is the Muladhara chakra. It is responsible for fear. The next chakra is responsible for desire or lust. And there is such logic. If you want to overcome fear, you can do it with the help of desires and lust. But sometimes it happens that desire and lust captures us. And what to do about it? And so, oddly enough, the higher chakra of Manipura is the chakra of anger, well, in its positive and negative manifestation. It, oddly enough, helps to block such, well, uncontrolled sexuality. That is, as if each higher chakra, it suppresses the previous one. Well, there are a lot of things connected with this, in fact. In other words, it turns out that, as it were, look at what kind of scheme we have turned out. That the Svadhisthana chakra is responsible for sexual behavior, for sexual desires, is located between two chakras, between fear and anger. That is, it turns out like such a vice. If you squeeze sexuality between fear and anger, it's not going anywhere. But as such an observation, you know, there is also a well-known fact that, let's say, in women, the feeling of fear and the feeling of sexuality can be combined. And for a man, the feeling of fear and the feeling of sexuality cannot be combined. On the contrary, a man's feeling of anger and sexuality can be combined. And for a woman, the combination of anger and sexuality cannot be combined. So, you know, it's purely a practical recommendation that if you want sex from your wife, then don't anger her, right? You don't do anything. You're not getting anything, are you? Moreover, the more you ignore her anger, the less you will get anything. And the reverse situation. If you want a man to be sexy, don't scare him, right? Here. Because everything can affect, you know, his, as they say, these functions, right? Even there, the neighbor in the stairwell came out there, started swearing loudly in the entrance, right? And the man is internally afraid, and suddenly there is a tiger, suddenly there is danger. It is instantly blocked. That is here. But on the other hand, look, yes, this is purely logic, working with emotions. Because sometimes there are outbursts of eroticism, uncontrollable. I've even mentioned that if people haven't practiced yoga for a long time, then they start practicing correctly. They are not surprised. How so? God, I thought I had no sexuality anymore. Well, usually when a person is well, aged already. And then everything went. And sometimes there are outbursts of uncontrolled sexuality. That is, it's just rushing a person. Both a man and a woman. There's no difference in that respect, is there? And it's very hard to cope with yourself. It's very hard to cope with yourself. It's becoming such an obsessive factor. Especially if you are single. That is... And what to do? What to do? How to work with it? Well, yoga first of all tells you that. Well, first of all, fight loneliness. Struggling with loneliness, right? And then, it means, as they say, there are already other methods. But sexuality is such a thing, you know, also insidious in this sense, that this excess of vitality. If you start spending unreasonably on your sexuality, well, the way ordinary people spend, then this vitality will flow away. That is, yes, the tension will subside, it will cease to be some kind of unsolvable problem for you there, right? But your vitality will also fall, which you could direct to higher cognition. That's why, I say again, there are such. This section of yoga, which teaches us how to still show sexuality, how to still have sex, but competently have sex, separates the part that goes to the continuation of life, that is, in fact, vitality, from pleasure. After all, we really want enjoyment in this regard. Yoga. For God's sake, take whatever you want. On the contrary, even the more you take competently, the better. The better you will retain the second part, which cannot be lost, and which must be sublimated. And after that, with such hefty exercises like Dayan Banks, like Mayurasana and other methods, they automatically turn sexuality into a more subtle energy, into a more subtle potential. He is sometimes called Oyas in texts. And it manifests itself, you know, very cunningly. Friends, convertible sexuality, how would it be? Well, as you know, figuratively. In general, all texts are figurative in yoga. It begins to accumulate in the chakras. And first of all, it begins to accumulate in the Manipura chakra. And this convertible sexuality leads to your charisma at the physical level. You know, there are people, I had a couple of students like that. Like this. They've been doing yoga for a long time, right? Here, you know, here you go with them, here are two guys like that. You understand, right? Here they showed with their appearance that it was better not to approach with evil intentions. Yes, they didn't say anything. Here is every gesture, every look, every word. I always took them when there were some such dubious situations, right? That is, here you are standing, and behind. From behind. And behind you are two such Manipuras, about which there is what you want. Here. And the most interesting thing is that it is felt by others. Here, let's say, in the same wildlife, sometimes it doesn't even come to fights, but opponents will stand against each other. Look. Everyone will understand their place in the hierarchy, right? Well, and on what is called, they will spread out. Here. Therefore, as the superpowers that were indicated here, find again, there's this. He becomes the master of desire, destroys sorrows, diseases, deceiving death, can enter the body of another. Well, for now, let's leave no comments about entering the body of another. Let's look at this later. And so Avalon had some more small ones there. Here, then, it is written here. We can create gold, see initiates, discover remedies for diseases, find hidden treasures. Here, look, finding remedies for the disease. When I was little, I had a cat. My favorite. So, I've been watching. I really saw that as soon as something is a problem with the cat's health, he starts eating some grass. In general, he was a strange cat, he loved fresh cucumbers very much. Here. And so, you know, when you are close to nature, when you have an excess of vitality, you kind of start to feel potential medicines. On this, many, you know, all the healers, all these shamans, all these, you know, these folk healers, right? After all, modern medicine. So they work. After all, when did modern medicine appear? In modern medicine, in our understanding, 100 years. And then, too, you know, open it, I don't know, it's unlikely. Somewhere, maybe, open a textbook on medicine on the internet. There is still the beginning of the century. More or there, find out biographies there. Who we have there, Pirogov, Mechnikov, who else? What kind of obscurantism did they fight, right? Here. And imagine what happened 200 years ago. But we have been living all our time, for a very long time. And so, in fact, each of us has a very strange ability. And in some people it is more developed, in some it is less developed. It's coming up to here. To cure with such natural methods. Namely, to intuitively feel what you need to cure a particular disease or to improve your well-being. And then, look what the situation is. Of course, this effect was known in iodine, of course, even certain rules and certain, as it were, techniques are given. How to strengthen this ability. And so everything that is connected both with extracting oneself and with feeling how one can heal another. is connected with Manipura chakra. That, by the way, is why it is believed that yoga treats all diseases there, and so on, so on. The South does not cure diseases. Doctors treat. Here. But on the other hand, there is also no denying it. Sometimes such competent combinations of means are mild. They are more effective than such a crude direct intervention of medicine. But medicine, friends, it changes every year. It's getting better and better every year. It is clear that we, living there in the Russian Federation, do not feel this, because our doctors, in general, are quite unhappy people. Pay them little, and this is all on a residual basis. But if you analyze what is happening in the United States of America right now, you will be, unpleasantly amazed at how much they have outstripped the rest of progressive humanity, for the simple reason that they spend money on it. That they have a medic is a go-go who. This is a very high level. So, of course, that's when they try to say that let's throw medicine out, that now yogis will be treated so much. This is wrong, friends. It's destructive. This is, in general, obscurantism. Yes, medicine has both positive and negative sides, strengths and weaknesses. But if the Lord God made it, then it is needed. Moreover, every year she gives more and more new methods, which, in general, are unknown in yoga. And that's right. Once again, yoga has other goals. Everything else is a free app. But nevertheless, look at what ways are known for you to develop this intuitive ability to feel and feel inside yourself. How to treat yourself and how to treat others. That is, in fact, how to become a folk healer in a good sense of the word. I emphasize in a good sense of the word because I am now opening a newspaper, and yes, to me. A folk healer there in such and such a generation, then, will cure you of everything, including damage to the eye. From the eyes. And how many wizards of all sorts, yes, these very witches, before anyone else there, yes, friends. Well, it's scary. And then, when I came across this kitchen a little bit, as it were, once, from the inside when I looked at what it was. It's clean. It's purely money. Slang said expense. Here. Well, probably there are really people there with natural data, well, as if really, who can heal and so on. But something to say to me, because there are too many, and there can't be many of them, and somehow something. Yes, well, let's do it. I'm not going to mention this audience now. Here. And I'm going to talk about true folk healers now. It means that some practices related to Manipura chakra are known from yoga, which supposedly or actually give the ability to heal others. And these practices are associated with Manipura chakra. I'm going to give you one of them now. In fact, I recommend doing it, if there is such an opportunity. Well, in general, even for other purposes, for the purposes of self-knowledge to students. And this practice consists in the fact that it is believed that if during the days of a solar eclipse, you are in the water on fluff, to meditate at this time, and repeat the mantra in one fell swoop, then the ability to heal others is acquired. Now I will try to decipher for you, as a first approximation, how this practice works, how this ritual works. Well, as an example of the fact that in true yoga, everything is very logical. You won't find any illogic. Another conversation is that we sometimes do not understand this logic, or some of these very subtle practices have been preserved to us in some kind of distorted. And here, imagine the whole situation. Yes, but it is certainly for the climatic zone of India, where it is warm and hot. What is a solar or lunar eclipse? A solar eclipse is quite such a beautiful sight. But the trouble is to look at it with your eyes. If you look at it with your eyes, you can burn it into the cornea. Because there is a very strange effect going on there, such an edge effect, when the moon covers part of the sun. It refracts part of the rays, and does enough, well, as if a magnifying glass collects the sun's rays at one point. So the edge of the moon in this respect, as it were, collects the keys. And you can very seriously damage your vision, if you look at it, well, as if with the naked eye. Therefore, usually during solar eclipses, everyone looks through a smoked glass, or four special such glasses are dark. Here welders usually work, you know, they weld. Here they have the same glass. Here. It is clear that where in ancient India to get smoked glass, right? Yes, and welding glass. No, but there is another way, known in ancient times, that a solar eclipse can be easily observed by reflection in water. That is, when you look at the water, you see everything perfectly, but only in a weakened view. Here, plus another action of water, plus another action of the mantra, plus another meditation on the navel center. All this together indirectly leads to the fact that, first of all, the navel center is the center of vision, and therefore, accordingly, when you contemplate, meditate first with an unblinking gaze at the eclipse, when you repeat this or that mantra. There are still many more of these moments. Then all of this together leads to the fact that you awaken these hidden effects associated with Manipura chakra. And indeed, at first you seem to start raising your vitality. You begin to feel how this vitality works. You have this intuitive ability to understand how other herbs, plants, some other ingredients can affect you. First of all, it affects your digestive process. Because, once again, it is very energy intensive, friends. And, as a result, you begin to intuitively feel other people. Because in this respect, friends, we are united more than divided. And that's where these intuitive healing abilities come from. But once again, friends, God forbid you, even if you have become such an intuitive healer, to speak out against medicine. God forbid you. Don't do that. Because here they come to me every year and start scolding me about medicine, that yoga heals everything. No. There are other goals in yoga. Another conversation is that if you are a medic yourself, plus you master the yogic methods of such medicine, then you will not be worth it. That's why this is such a moment. So, questions. Can you be in touch? Someone sit down at the computer, take a look, and what do we have on the line?
There's one question. He's the Lord's dog and down. Does it work out the chakra in the same way as the Dhyana bank?
Now. So, come on, someone, portray. Not, you see, here in this chakra. Well, in general, in fact, of course, all the chakras are interconnected. Yes, I mean, all the poses, all the asanas, they are interconnected. Well, you can, yes. In other words, the impact is something like this, but, of course, there is more emphasis on other things. On the hands, on the feet to a greater extent. Therefore, to be honest, I do not remember that there was anything in the treatises on this subject.
Just an explanation is that in this asana, you want to draw in your stomach and breath in the same way.
Well, you know, let's say there is a mass on Ulyan Viparita Karani wise as an inverted pose. Misha, show me what? Yes. That is, there are many poses where we can work. Here. In particular, this is a pose, yes, this is the so-called Viparita Karani wisely. It, in fact, even goes not as an asana is a position, but as wisely. More like a symbol, a seal, and so on. So that's how it counts. Yes. And in this pose, you can also relax and the navel area, as if it would begin to fall through there by itself. Here in particular, the following is known about this exercise, that from the treatise, that if you perform it for a long enough time, it increases the digestive fire, and it is believed that you need to eat well if you practice this asana for a long time. Well, long is meant if you are in it for more than 40 minutes in a row. That is, not there, not 5, not 10, but 40 or less. So, it is believed that if one of the treatises says you are in this asa for no more than a certain time, then the body begins to digest itself, which is unjustified. Well, since the gastric fire increases. Therefore, of course, there are many other post provisions there, where they are also indirectly involved. Well, now offhand, how else am I? Here is another very similar one, also with a constant. And, well, due to the action of the abdominal press, yes. But once again, friends, look what an interesting thing. Here we are sorting out the umbilical chakra, some other chakra. But after all, we are an integral, a single organism. It is impossible to tear out the navel chakra from us, and so that the rest remain not involved. Similarly, asanas. They seem to have a pronounced character in one thing, and in other articles to a lesser extent. Therefore, why is it known again and again, but here it is. About 80 aces have reached us. Not so much, actually. And everything else is already some kind of variations and so on, so on. It is believed that this is quite enough for a modern person. You know, yogs are very rational in this respect. If you can do with 80 asanas, why invent many, many millions of them? Again, the same ones say that a million millions, but as if they mean, look, what logic is in hatha yoga, which I do not know. I'm going to be angry at this seminary. After all, I'm dedicated to anger, right? Here. I'm just, to be honest, fed up with these unskilled, bad people, radishes, yoga teachers in the city of Moscow, right? They just got me. They don't understand anything themselves, they zombify others. Them. Well, that is, they intimidate, they give something of their own under the name of hatha yoga. And moreover, here I am looking at them. They are all like robots like that. That's it, that's the pose and that's it, right? On the Raskoryaku, there means like this, like this. Oh no? Yoga is alive. You have to work with yourself, rediscover yoga. Yes, you can breed these asanas for yourself personally. A huge amount. In general, there is even such a logic, you know, there is such a logic that, well, in one of the treatises, it is said that before becoming a man, you and I went through numerous births and deaths in the bodies of various animals. And so it turned out that if we lived in the body of this or that animal, then you do everything well. Then from this moment to the present day, we carry the forces of this animal and, accordingly, the elaboration of the structure of our bodies. And if not, then no. And so, you know, it's kind of a tradition to call poses by the names of animals. Here I was in the body of a snake, but something is not the same there. I did not finalize it. Now let's refine it in the human body. Feel this internal logic of the structure of your body, and come on there, somewhere, somehow, then feel what's wrong with you there. Do it, start correcting it. But how to fix it? How can I fix it? Stupidly raping myself. But you can skew in the other direction. And you can on the contrary, groping. And how are you made? Remembering that your natural state of joy, happiness, harmony, you begin to look for the position that just corresponds to joy. Happiness, harmony. This is how Hatha asanas are born. That's how they are born. You rediscover them from the inside. They are embedded in you. They, as you know, DNA programmed the device of your body. Every asana is programmed in the same way. And so, as a rule, we all have common flaws. They fit into these 80-85. Well, who knows, your previous life, in what body you were still there. Maybe you have something special. But when the time comes, you just feel that the body will ask you to do something like that with a show-off. You understand, right? Here. Or somehow change the situation a little bit, and it will be from the inside, not from the outside. Here. That's the logic here. So. That's it, right? That's it. Who else has what? We will continue. I wanted to come in from the other side. Yes, go ahead. Yes, I will go from top to bottom. Of course, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Well, to understand in general the whole principle of this fire in the universe and inside us, because we know that what is inside us is in the universe, and all this is interconnected, and we, as Vadim mentioned, seem to be embedded in this universe, at the expense of our chakras. So, there is the principle of this itself. And, probably, to make it easier to understand and feel it, you need to sit in a comfortable position. Aha, let's sit down. Now we are going to work a little mentally, but it's okay, nothing heavy will happen. We close our eyes and imagine that we have no body and there is nothing at all. That is, we disappeared. Suddenly we were gone. Well, we agree with this somehow, we imagine. And now it appears out of nowhere. We appear with such a feeling of just what I am. And we track what feelings arise. In theory, there should be confidence, some kind of pride, warmth, too. And this one here I am, so far everything turns out to revolve around him. It begins to expand, as it were, or to receive sensations from the entire space. So he doesn't have a body yet. And now there are some sensations inside of us, and everywhere. And these sensations begin to expand all the time, forming the principle of space. But they don't have a form yet, only sensations. The principle of space arises, it is so light, expanding, everything fits in it, it never resists anything. In order to somehow be in this space, or to do something with this space, we will need to divide it into some flat ones. Or rather even fill this space with the same mass, so that we can divide it by time, by distance. But this gray mass just filled the space. And there is a sense of touch, and we can move around. But if we still have our eyes closed, then we don't see anything, and no matter how we essentially separate, we kind of feel what we are, and we separate from others if we touch, but we don't understand what is where. We do not see the brightness and individuality of objects. We see everything sulfurously, in one gray mass. Only the sensations of contact will tell us that someone is different. And now, if we open our eyes, we will see individuality in objects. That is, there are closed eyes, that was all. As there were some internal sensations, there were some internal experiences, but we did not know what was going on in the external. We didn't feel it. If we open our eyes, we will see that everything is bright, and everything is saturated, and everything seems to have its own essence. Yes. And everyone is different from each other. And this is exactly the principle of fire. It makes of this gray mass. It gives sight and warmth out of grayness. And it gives such a thing as transformation. That is, fire. It is made of what it needs. From that grayness, he does what he needs, transforming. What is not needed, he discards, and what is needed, bright, leaves. So, accordingly, his main task is just, so to speak, to do something individual. Well, let me explain a little bit, as if from life. I should have come here somehow during rush hour in the subway. I approach, and there in general, there's nowhere to fall on the road. I was picked up, carried into the subway car, and we went. And it was in the morning. I wanted to sleep. I closed my eyes. And I suddenly realized that, well, there are no other feelings left. There's a passenger on the left, on the right. That is, me like this. That's it, I'm like this, right. That's all there is, not to fall, not to sit down, not to get up. You can relax completely. And when you close your eyes, everything turns into a single space, really filled with tactile sensations. And this is exactly what the throat principle is responsible for. The throat principle of space. The heart principle feels for tactile sensations. And you know how well I slept. In general, such that here is a sense of security. Then you will not fall, nothing. Because there are real people around. Well, thank God, that's the only thing I want to say. That the ventilation was good, because if, of course, it's stuffy, then that's all. The effect disappears. Here, it's fine. And everyone is so dear, close and sweet. Although these people are for the first time in their lives. Can you imagine, right? This is the first time you went to the subway, right? And then when I opened my eyes and we went out, in. One person, another, a third. They are all somehow different, somehow scary in themselves, at a distance. You understand when you see them. When you're not in such close contact with them, when you see them, that's one thing, that's another. That is, this is a kind of, as they say, the separating action of Maya comes with the action of vision. We're something. We start the whole in fragments. Thank you. And accordingly, just like, for example, a child, right? He takes and uses this principle, forms his own individual body from the mother. It is small, it lies in the seam, it forms an individual body. Also, for example, in business, right? We have an idea of some kind, we have a void in our head, roughly speaking, right? And more precisely, we need to put an idea in some space, give it some sensations, and really punch it. And make some kind of, well, thing out of it, roughly speaking, or bring this idea to life. Yes. So. And let's do it now. Let's run through the text a little more now, to see if we're all there. Coverage. Here's an interesting point. Yeah. Also here. From these three centers, the gross virat develops, the body in the waking state. Well, yes, well, that is, it's firm. Arthur Avalon. Yes, this is his explanation, but in fact, Avalon in his books, he systematized many different sources, and tried to give such a complete one. The finished picture, that is, as it were. Well, imagine that, right? That is, here is the lower principle of the earth, the next water, the next fire. These are really, as we have said, three such fundamental principles of birth, preservation, and destruction. And when we incarnate in this world, then, strictly speaking, we can say that a person is alive only if he has a body. If he doesn't have a body, as you understand, it's once again, it's a ghost. Here, and everything that is connected with these processes, well, even in our physical body, they are interconnected, that is, embodied in matter, if you like, yes. All right. What else is there? Let's do it according to abilities, superpowers. That's it. Well, meditation on this center achieves the power of creation and destruction. Well, as if we had already talked about it. Well, this is what rewards us with all the riches. So, wonderful friends. Now, let's go in. Well, here, of course, it would be possible for us to practice manta rays with you now, a rather long one, which is about Ram there. And accordingly creams with all the letters, right? At this time, well, as here I am sending you to the previous one. The seminar follows the same pattern. But now I want to touch a little on another, more practical side. This is exactly working with Manipura chapa in our ordinary life with regard to anger. Is anger a bad thing? Is it needed or not needed? But we have already partially answered this question. As long as we are at a certain stage of our ignorance, we need anger extremely. At least for the simple reason that it helps to cope with fear and lust. Even because of this factor, it is extremely useful. On the other hand, look, yes, as if when we begin to commit certain actions under the influence of anger, inappropriate actions under the influence of anger, that is, we use the anger factor incorrectly. We generate what is called negative karma. Negative karma. Because really, if we are furious that we start doing things there, we climb up to fight somewhere. Or, well, somehow to dominate, infringing on the freedom of others, under the feeling of intoxication. Then thereby we generate a chain of retaliatory actions of the universe. And that sooner or later it will come back to us. On the other hand, friends, anger is a very good thing. When on the contrary, some forces are trying to crush you. And here is anger. It helps to overcome fear very well. I once read the memoirs of veterans of our veterans who fought during the Great Patriotic War. And of course, they were always asked, well, how did they fight? It's even scary. Well, really scary. Friends, there are sometimes 30,000 people a day, and 30,000 people in one day. No, Pop, 30,000. Or you run there to attack, they're going to kill you right now. Or are you there on a tank, on an airplane, on a ship, anywhere, right? And as soon as you begin to imagine that you can be killed, you immediately begin to freeze with fear. And very often many veterans were asked the question, like, were you scared or weren't you scared? How do you feel? And, as a rule, here is one general trend that, as a rule, it happens to be scary either before or after, but not during. The fact that during this excitement of the fight, you no longer think about fear. You're already there, subject to some other emotions. Of course, aerobatics. Well, it is considered that, in fact, it comes even from all the more or less sane martial arts, which, so to speak, have somehow reached us, which, of course, is best. It is best to reflect aggression with a pure, cold, unclouded mind, without succumbing to fear, anger, or any other emotions. As a machine, you turn into such a killing machine, and start in cold blood, which means that your enemies, as they say, are like cabbage to decorate. Here, well, where to go, friends? We have enough negative karma that we live in a world where there are still wars, but it is positive enough that we have yoga. And over time, if we live according to the laws of yoga, there will be no need for wars, aggression, and so on. But when will it be? So, but on the other hand, there is a moment when we experience fear. And now, of course, anger needs to vent fear. And from an evolutionary point of view, well, at least something can already be done. Misplaced fear. Misplaced fear can be defeated by the right, appropriate use of anger. Think about this word. Now, as for our everyday life. After all, very often we catch ourselves being terribly angry. And here there is one very dangerous unconditional trait in anger, that when anger wakes up, it overshadows our mind, and we begin to do rash things, for which we then get in response. In fact, it's not even anger itself that's scary. The scary thing is that the anger that is born in us makes us do something. And that's the very first thing that, well, tactically, the work with anger begins with, is to break the connection between the feeling of anger and the fact that you are at least doing something or not doing something under the influence of anger. Let's say you've been offended, and you're going to fight with your fists here. And so, the very first thing is to make, such a layer between sensation and action. There is gasoline, there is a burning match. They are safe by themselves, but if you put them together, then, you understand, there will be a very big fireworks display. If there is some kind of impenetrable wall between gasoline and a match, then it's okay. And in the same way, yoga encourages us to develop the following habit. No matter how much anger captures us, it should not break out. In general, feelings of anger, they are peculiar. Friends, you suddenly begin to feel that you are really under the influence of this fire of anger begin to melt inside. In other words, it feels like all of your internal structures have melted. Like red-hot magma. And you, as you know, Mount Vesuvius, and only a thin layer, so your surface, your body does not allow this potential to escape. And look further, what effect is happening? If you have experienced a terrible feeling of anger, but did not let it escape, then the following process goes on. You become molten inside to be. And this feeling is very unpleasant. It encourages you to start doing something right away. You restrain yourself, but it's a hell of a torment, because it seems to you that such a state will last forever. And from the very thought that you will be in such a terrible state forever, absolutely. You know it's bad. Do you know how it is? 5 minutes of eternal hell. But, fortunately, this condition cannot last long, or sometimes unfortunately, depending on the situation. So, fortunately, we can hold it, and then, over time, we suddenly begin to understand that this emotion begins to disappear. Disappear, disappear, disappear somewhere, and you seem to cool down, cool down, cool down, cool down. And then, after some time, you will suddenly feel a surging wave of inner strength, inner charisma, inner such as might. In other words, it turns out that an outburst of anger, an outburst of this anger energy, it kind of melted you inside. But you didn't let it break out, so you didn't lose this potential. And everything inside of you is bubbling, bubbling, so that's it, you've melted. But then everything starts to cool down, and you start to recrystallize. And all the pollution that you carried in yourself, and if we speak in terms of karma yoga, all the seeds of negative karma begin to burn out at the same time. And you know if the seed has burned out, but it will never give any more gatherings. And if you didn't let go, then you then recrystallize with a feeling of more power, more strength, more charisma, which begins to be felt by everyone else. If you let anger escape, then you experience euphoria for a while that you can do at least something. It means that you have beaten the offender. You feel triumphant, and then, after a while, you feel a loss of strength. Because you have spent this potential, you know, like a prominence, an impulse into the universe broke out and spent on something. And, of course, it's good if you spent it on business, but if you didn't spend it on business, it's bad. Therefore, strictly speaking, this ascetic practice, when you feel anger and hold back with them, makes you stronger and stronger every time. But the trouble is, it's easy to say. When we face this live, it is very difficult to embody it. For what reason? Not because you can't do it, you can do it. For another reason, that, as a rule, we are exposed to attacks of anger unplanned. We don't expect to face anger. You came to the store in a good mood to buy, and the saleswoman was rude to you. And you got carried away. If you had been warned that there was a boorish person there, right? That's one thing. And when there is no declaration of war, we don't have time to intercept the situation. And so there are other tricks of all kinds. Well, that is, the very first thing is to hold out for the first few seconds before the attack. Here someone attacked us. Here are a few seconds when our anger is already boiling, and to hold out for a few seconds. Not to let him escape. This is the most critical moment. So there are all sorts of tricks for this. The most different ways. Someone, let's say, plays meditation inside himself in advance, imagining this or that opportunity where you will be annoyed. And plays, let's say, your next reaction to automatism. Well, in particular, you were rude, you turned around and left. That is, you first mentally act out this situation once, a second time, a third time, and then, when you encounter it live, then this program turns on as if on your subconscious, you leave, gain time and cool down. But you see, sometimes the most terrible anger that we experience is when we are provoked to anger by people, our relatives and friends. Since they can click on our most painful points. In other words, Don't be so much afraid of enemies in this regard as friends. I was just here the other day, giving very interesting statistics on the number of murders in the United States of America. So, statistics say the following, that people tend to kill those they knew. You know what this is about, right? Yes, yes. That is, people are less inclined to kill those they do not know. Well, however, there is also, by the way, a gradation of differences between men and women. I read this wonderful article in the latest issue of the journal in the world of science, Scientific America. If you are interested, find it. So, it turns out that you and I become defenseless against anger. And we need to buy at least some time, not to let him break through. They didn't let him break through, that's all, he's cooling down. How to do it? It is necessary to put some kind of wall between you and the object of irritation at any cost. That is, to physically separate you. Here. So that you don't use your fists there or do something else. Therefore, this is one such way of working from the outside. But this, friends, is not enough. You may even be physically divorced, and the memories of resentment of that person, let's say, who offended you, will again continue to give birth to anger inside you. Such exuding, annihilating anger. You'll just be furious that there, let's say, such a bastard exists on earth at all. Yes, that is, that such reptiles generally go. And in fact, my Zayu. Thank you very much. And in fact, this is also a very, very destructive thing, because, well, as if we spend a huge amount of nervous energy on these emotions. And here, oddly enough, the following yogic philosophy and the following meditation saves us, which encourages us to wish happiness to all friends, strangers and acquaintances. Thus, it indirectly suggests to us that everything we encounter in our personal universe, we have directly or indirectly generated ourselves. In other words, no one would ever have caused you a feeling of anger if you had not done some such actions before, as a result of which such a reaction of the universe came. And if you respond to anger unnecessarily, then you will rock the situation even more. That is, you know it's on the rise, on the rise. Then it will be reflected and come back to you more and more. This is usually how military conflicts begin. Someone pushed someone, he hit him in response, he took out a gun in response, shot, wounded. In response, he took out a machine gun, killed the offender. So the relatives of this one, the one who was killed, then went to the village where it started. Village to village, country, country to country. The First World War claimed 50 million lives. The Second World War claimed even more lives. And how did it all start? Here is the First World War. Where did it start? There were terrorists who, in anger, believed that it was necessary to kill the Duke. Here, they were waiting for him, so they found him. Such a historical character. She said there was a principal. Such an uncle. Well, not an uncle, he was there, in my opinion, 18 or something. He wasn't even years old, he wasn't less. He shot the Duke's wife, just like that, and shot her. I felt anger towards them. Oh yeah. And they declared war in response. And in response to this declaration of war, another country, and another a third. And 50 million of one jerk, in fact, died. Well, of course, it's not that simple, right? Because other contradictions have already accumulated there. But the trigger can be completely accidental, completely accidental. That's exactly the same with us in life. We have a lot of contradictions in our life with the universe. We do a lot of bad things in our past history, too. And we do a lot of bad things. And sometimes, you know, the neutral status quo. And it's better not to rock the situation. Don't rock the situation. Here. And so anger in this regard may be that first one. The first push that causes an avalanche. That's the danger. The danger is not even that you showed anger there, but because it will be followed by an increase. Maybe, anyway. Go, follow incrementally something to go. Here. And so this is the negative side of anger, but there is certainly a positive side to anger. Sometimes anger should be shown, but in what form? In what form? There is such a competent manifestation of anger. There are also such methods of competent manifestation of anger. First of all, the very first such group of techniques is to turn anger against oneself. That is, to be angry with yourself. That how is it so? Well, how do you live, right? That you got into such a situation that someone is mocking you. After all, he brought the situation to the handle himself, didn't he? Here. And you start to get angry at yourself, as they say, and scold yourself. But it's hard to do, because we are instinctively used to scolding others, not ourselves. Now, it needs some kind of habit. So, well, let's look at this topic a little later. Yes.
Question from Elena Guzenko, Astra Group. And if you were rude to me, I turned around, left and cried. Is this also a manifestation of anger? In other words, some other form?
No, of course, yes. Well, once again, friends, let's do this. There are situations where you don't have to show anger, and there are situations where you have to show anger. Here I am. I immediately set you up, here on the working wave. Because sometimes yoga is understood as some kind of slobbery teaching that talks nonsense. Do you understand? Everything is much more complicated in this world. And you must, first of all, recognize the situation and decide for yourself how to get out of it. And sometimes it is very useful to demonstrate anger. Very useful. Especially, when you are not affected inside, when you realize that you are outwardly. That's how an Indian put on such a terrible mask, but inside it is white and fluffy, right? Here. Why? Because they really will sit on their necks. Well, imagine, a plague bacillus has entered your body. Brazen with a challenge starts yours, so this one devours the potential. What should you do with it? To enter into negotiations, or maybe, I don't know what tolerance can be there, to show political correctness, but there. Not to offend in every way, it means, no, there. We need to talk in a clear language. That is, we must first, determine the levels. There is a level that understands only a certain language of power. Why is it that until now, yes, here, there is still, say, the United States of America, the Soviet Union, have a large nuclear potential and are not going to give it up. And God forbid, they will refuse. Don't. We are peaceful people, but our armored train is on a siding. Here. And sometimes you have to show that. Well, actually, guys, you don't need to wipe my feet. I'm not doing any harm, but it will be more expensive for you. Yes. Sometimes there are different forms for educational purposes, there are for some other purposes of intimidation there, and so on and so forth. But in each individual case, it is necessary to understand. But even if you show it, demonstrate it, it will work for the benefit of only one case. If you have an island of untouchability in the depths, and you don't even seem to show anger so much as you play anger. And you can, turn on the reverse speed at any time. Just crawl away if you suddenly realized that you got involved in the wrong place. Again, this is not a manifestation of anger, this is a problem. Absolutely correct. That's what I'm calling for. Because sometimes they say to me, here it is necessary to destroy anger. But if you remove anger from everyone, you will turn into the jellyfish of similar creatures. Do you understand? Another conversation is that you have already, if you have risen to some very high level, then you boldly throw out anger. And you will be evenness, calmness, as they would say in the garden. Yes, but look, the situation is that there is some kind of logic. The logic in this matter is an approximation. First of all, you must avoid anger at all costs in the initial stages of spiritual development. Both right and wrong. At any cost. And only then, when you feel a little bit of strength, but only then use it. And the most difficult thing is the first step. It's generally at the first stage to try to use it at a minimum, well, as if to avoid it. And once again, sometimes yes, you can use some evasions to restrain yourself, right? Here you are being angered there, but you are holding back. But it is much more difficult when you have anger from understanding that your abuser is just on the ground. It's not that he's nearby, and you're ready to break his skull there, but that he actually exists in principle. This is the scariest one. The scariest thing. I read in some book about, I don't know if it's true or not, about American Indians. Allegedly, they had a very strange disease. That if an Indian felt injustice or anger and could not react to it in any way, he could die. And he, as a rule, that's if he captured that somewhere. Do you remember this white son of the desert about this? What was his name there? The hero who was there. Yes, he wanted revenge. That is, if you meet your grandfather's Jaff, don't touch him, he's mine, right? And he's human. Just for this purpose, I only traveled there through the desert to find the offender and take revenge. Yes. Here. And this is very destructive, friends. It's exhausting, it drains all of our strength. Unfortunately, people are susceptible to this. These are the political leaders, right? They start with a political struggle, and then they just become obsessed with destroying the enemy. Yes, that is, nearby, not nearby. Here. This is extremely destructive. But do you know what kind of trouble it is with everything? That the one you are angry with today will become your best friend tomorrow, and vice versa, will help you very much. And vice versa, your loved ones, whom you love and adore, can overnight turn into your terrible enemies, which you will want to strangle there or their skull. You know they say, from love to hate is one step, and this is a very big danger that. You know, as the saying goes, Lord, let us cope with our friends. We'll sort out our enemies somehow. But with regard to anger, oddly enough, anger is more terrible in relation, first of all, to friends, and secondly, to strangers than to their enemies. Because you know roughly what to expect from your enemies, but not from your friends. And since any friend can, once again, instantly turn into an enemy, and the enemy will instantly turn into a friend, it is extremely necessary to practice the following meditation every day, which is called, May all living beings be happy. And thereby prescribe an algorithm within yourself that you let go of the situation. That if you don't like some situation in the universe, well, it's a misunderstanding. And you're going to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. And if you don't want to see something or someone, well, the universe is very big. There is enough space for everyone to never cross paths with the offender again, either in this or in the next life. Here, but there really is another danger at the same time. But the main thing is that you do not beat this offender, then, or even, what's good, do not kill. Now the following is a very strong, serious warning in yoga. The fact is that today we said that as you start practicing yoga, your vitality grows. This is a great potential. It can manifest itself, firstly, through increased sexuality, and on the other hand, friends, through your excessive short temper. And I do not know of a single case where a yogi or a goddess has really learned to possess themselves when nothing outrages them anymore. when they are really not subject to anger. So, I do not know of a single case of people reaching this level before they go through a period of excessive irritability, excessive anger. That is. And usually all relatives and friends are very surprised. How do you do yoga? You have to be frostbitten, so wear like a stump, not to react to anything. How is it that you're shouting and making noise with your foot and that? Because usually we show it all to our relatives and friends. So friends, this is a different law. Yes, that's before. Before you learn to manage yourself, a rather painful stage of growth takes place. Very painful. And we tend to show anger in direct proportion sometimes to our success. The other day, I gave a presentation in a very respected company. Well, I read a lecture practically on yoga. And there a girl works in this company, and before that she worked as an administrator in one of the yoga centers in Moscow. Such a school means one of the, by ear. And she says, I say, where did I go to work there? I thought that here is a yoga center, yoga teachers, they are all celestial beings there, flying through the air. But when I encountered them live, I realized that they were people. Psychopaths are even more than usual, right? And where to go? After all, how are we? After all, our yoga teachers stamp how? 2 weeks, 100,000, a crust. Tomorrow in the gym. You know, right. And that's not the worst option. Well, what do you think? But there is such a situation in yoga that teaching yoga is a quick method of doing yoga. All processes begin to go both spiritually and faster, and all the flaws begin to come out of these people. Here. Therefore, there is nothing to be surprised about. That is, as if this moment is accelerated. Therefore, it is extremely important to constantly practice this meditation. In any case, in an open yoga university, and we train yoga teachers, but not for 2 weeks, or even 2 months. You understand, right? And not even 2 years. Here. And we've been cooking for 4 years, I think that's not enough. So, we demand that each of the future yoga teachers practice meditation every day throughout the entire training period, so that people and beings will be happy. So, Mish, it takes meditation. Yes. But I also wanted to say a little more. We're after that. Yes. Yes, yes. Let's go to meditation, take a break, and let's sit right down in a comfortable position. Yes, my back and neck are left. We cover our eyes, and in the center of our building, we present a glowing, bright, untouched, beautiful lotus flower.
Закрываем глаза. И в центре нашей груди представляем светящийся, яркий, незатронутый, красивый цветок лотоса.
And we say to ourselves the phrase, may all living beings be happy, and we see how this phrase turns into a point of light inside the flower. Begins to expand, filling the whole body, filling the hall, Moscow, the earth, and the whole universe.
Начинает расширяться, заполняя все тело, заполняя зал, Москву, Землю и всю Вселенную.
And we wish happiness to all those who are dear to us, love Ram, who love us.
Кого мы любим, кто нас любит,
May they be happy.
счастливы.
We return to the center of the chest. We see our lotus. Beautiful. And again, we say the phrase, may all living beings be happy. We see how our wishes, in the form of a wave of light, begin to fill our body, the hall, Russia, the earth, and the whole universe.
Землю и всю Вселенную.
And we wish happiness to all those whom we do not know, who do not know us. Probably, we will never even meet, but still let them be happy.
Но все равно пусть они будут счастливы.
We return to the center of the chest again. We see the lotus. Again we say to ourselves, may all living beings be happy. We see how our wishes, in the form of a wave of light, begins to expand, fills the hall, the entire universe, reaches the darkest corners of this universe, which we might not even want to look into and even think about it.
Который бы нам, может быть, даже не хотелось бы заглядывать и думать даже об этом.
But they are there. And we wish happiness to all those with whom we may have enmity, who wish us misfortune, who envy us or whom we envy. Someone has offended us someone.
Завидуют нам, или кому мы завидуем, или нас кто-то обидел нас кто-то.
Even if they wish us happiness, we wish happiness. If they are happy, they will not be up to us. We return to the center of the chest, take 3 free breaths, and exhale.